already. My name is April Reed. To welcome you on behalf of our Reed Financial Group crew today. We've really been enjoying this health and wealth series that we started. This was one of the things that came out of COVID, actually, quite frankly. We really wanted a way to stay in touch and to see folks and to provide as much value as we can. Some of these we do that are not related to financial topics. Others, like today, certainly are. And for those of you who have joined since I already shared this with you, there is a chat feature that for you it probably appears on the right-hand side of your screen. You are more than welcome to type questions as we go along today, and we will get to just as many of those as we can. We again thank you for those of you who have already submitted questions, and we look forward to our spotlight guests today. So thank you so much for joining us. The content's going to go for around 35-40 minutes or so, somewhere in there, and then we're going to spend as much time as we can answering some questions. So fire away if you have them. And I'm going to now turn things over to my co-CEO and sister, Abby Reed, to introduce our spotlight guest today.
Thank you very much, April, and thank you, Heather, for being with us, and everybody for being with us today. I know there's a million things that you could be doing right now, and we appreciate you spending time with us, and we really enjoy these, like April just said. So today we have a very special guest, Heather. We've known Heather for many, many years, and she is the Social Security expert in the industry. She's brilliant. She makes a very what can be a very complicated topic very simple to understand, which we think is so important with financial things. It can get very complicated, so Heather's great at that. Like April said, we received so many great questions before this. So if we've compiled those, Heather's going to go through a very informative and educational workshop for about 35-40 minutes. And then we're going to go ahead and go through the questions that we received, and hopefully the ones that we received in the meantime as well. So we'll get through as many of those as we can. Don't get to your question, don't worry, we will answer that for you. We might not have enough time today, but we'll get it answered for you. We also have an opportunity to have a consult with me or April. So we will chat the link out to our calendar, and you can schedule a time to chat with us. This information it's a lot of it. And it also produces a lot of questions. So if you have questions that are specific to you and we don't get to them, or you have additional questions, then please don't hesitate to reach out to us, and we can schedule a consult, a 30-minute consult. We'd be happy to do that. So one thing I wanted to get to first, there's a lot of acronyms in the financial world, and we like to try and make it as clear as possible because there's just so many of them. So one of them we're going to be talking a lot about today is FRA. So whenever you see the acronym FRA, that means full retirement age, which is also known as normal retirement age, and it generally refers to the age you have to reach for very
our own benefit amount and so forth without necessarily thinking about the other person. And it's not because we're selfish, it's just that we don't really understand how to draw the line between filing ages and the couple and the dynamics that go with that. So we'll talk about what you should look for there. And then we're going to talk about something called what I call the survivor's switch technique. And it is the most frequently missed opportunity to leverage income when you're facing the death of a spouse. So I want to make sure that you understand that very unique opportunity if you're ever faced with that situation. Because I'll tell you, Social Security, while they have some wonderful representatives, they're specifically told in their manual not to engage in anything that looks like advice. So that's why I'm so passionate about making sure that you go in there with the knowledge you need to make sound decisions. And so we'll look through that survivor switch technique and what could happen depending upon what kind of information that you have. And then pandemic planning. Naturally, I didn't expect this pandemic to continue for as long as it has. And it certainly has had an effect on all of us, probably on some way or another, but it certainly has an effect on Social Security, right? With unemployment right now at historic highs, that means that a trust fund that was already sort of flailing is going to have additional stress on it. And so we'll talk about the trust fund report. I think one of the questions was, can they take my benefits away? Here I am collecting it. Can they take it away? We'll talk about that. And we'll talk about some cash flow strategies. Is it better to maybe file for Social Security versus take money out of an account? We'll kind of talk about those things too. So let me dive right in and talk to you about what deemed filing is. So deemed filing is essentially for anyone born on or after January 2nd, 1954. I call this you get what you get strategy, meaning that you no longer, if you're entitled, if what I call dually entitled, if you're entitled to your own retirement benefit that you've earned, and you're also entitled to a spousal or in some cases an ex-spousal benefit, you can't pick and choose which one to collect first. So some of you may know what I'm talking about. Let's say that in the old world, before the Bipartisan Budget Act of 2015, if there was a strategy that would allow you to say, okay, I'm entitled to my own retirement benefit, I'm entitled to a spousal, I'm going to restrict my filing to spousal only. I'm going to collect that benefit at first, and then I'm going to pick up my own benefit later, as late as age 70, because then I'm sort of having my cake and eating it too, right? I'm able to collect a smaller spousal benefit, but while I'm doing that, I'm earning delayed retirement credits on my own. That is no longer permitted for anyone born on or after January 2nd, 1954. So that means that if you are entitled to both a retirement benefit and a spousal benefit, the only way you're going to get a spousal benefit is if it's greater than your own retirement benefit. So your own retirement benefit is always going to be paid first. Now, let me be clear, though. It's not that no one will get a spousal benefit. It's only if it's greater. So I think I have an example. I do. So let's look at Susan, who's entitled to a full retirement age benefit of $2,000, okay? Her husband has already filed. She's also entitled to a $1,500 spousal benefit. That tells me that his full retirement age benefit is $3,000 because she's entitled to 50% of that if she waits until her full retirement age. But because her own retirement benefit is $500 more, she just will forfeit the spousal benefit. So she just won't collect it because she wasn't born in time. She was born on or after January 2nd, 1954. However, what if we change the scenario? And what if instead Susan's own benefit at full retirement age was $1,000? Could she collect the spousal benefit then? The answer is yes. What she would get is she'd get her first $1,000 in her own benefit, and then she'd get what I call the spousal excess. So she'd basically get two eligibility letters. She would get one that says you're entitled to a $1,000 retirement benefit. She'd get a second one that says you're entitled to a $500 spousal benefit. The total is that $1,500, which is the higher spousal benefit in that case, but she's always paid first from her own retirement benefit and then the difference in spousal. So don't be confused to think that all bets are off for spousal benefits. It's only for those folks that have worked enough and that their own retirement benefit is greater than a spousal or ex-spousal benefit could be. They weren't born before January 2nd, 1954, that they can no longer collect those spousal or ex-spousal benefits. So the exception to deemed filing, and this is what's called the restricted filing strategy. Now, it is still alive and well. However, you had to have been born before January 2nd, 1954 and not yet filed. So anyone who's listening to this that perhaps was thinking, I'm going to wait until 68, 69, 70 because I want to let my benefits grow. I've got the higher benefit, but I was born by this date. Is there an opportunity? And the answer is yes. So let's look at Frank, and I see these all the time for people that just had an intention of waiting, but didn't realize they had this opportunity. So in this case, Frank was born on December 11th, 1953, so we can check the box. He was born in time to use the strategy. He plans to file at age 70 when his benefit will be $3,800. Again, you see a pattern. He's got the higher wage, so he's thinking I should wait, right? His wife, Marcia, has already filed. That's critical His wife needs to have already filed or be prepared to file in order for him to use the strategy. Her full retirement age benefit is $2,000. He may file for 50% of her $2,000. He may that's what's called filing restricted. So he would collect $1,000 a month while he's also earning delayed retirement credits to age 70, and then he'll pick up his $3,800. So he'll stop getting the $1,000, but he'll pick up the $3,800 a month. So if he files in October, he'll receive an additional $38,000 in unanticipated benefits from now until age 70. This is a missed opportunity that people don't realize they have. The critical ingredient, again, is the birth date. So you have to be born before January 2nd, 1954. The other thing is you have to have a spouse that either is eligible to collect and willing to, or is already receiving their benefit. This also applies to ex-spousal benefits. If you meet the ex-spousal requirements of being married for at least 10 years, currently unmarried, and you meet this birth date requirement, you could do the same. So I call this the have your cake and eat it too. Get a little bit in terms of spousal benefits while you're also earning those delayed retirement credits to the tune of 8% per 12-month period. So that's a pretty good opportunity. So I know I've gone through that a little bit fast, but I want to leave a little bit of time at the end for us to talk about your questions. So let's talk about the earnings limitation. And that is, if you plan to file for benefits before your full retirement age and you're still continuing to work, you must be prepared to understand how this works, because a lot of people get caught sort of on the back end and are surprised to get a letter from the Social Security Administration that says, you earn too much money, please send us a check back. So I want to make sure you understand this. So if you're considering filing, and we'll use 2020 in our example, excuse me. In 2020, if you are under full retirement age for the entire year and you plan to file for benefits, if you earn more than $18,240 in 2020, any amount of income you earn in excess of that amount reduces your benefit by 50%. I know that's a lot, and I'll give you an example in a second. In the year that you reach full retirement age up to the month before, okay, so say you turn your full retirement age in September, so from January until August, you're still under this earnings limitation, but it's a higher amount. It's $48,600. And the pullback of benefits is only $1 for every 3 over the limit, so it's not as much. And then once you hit full retirement age and older, there's no limit on your earnings. That's a critical thing that differs from taxation of benefits, which is what I say is the gift that can always keep on giving. It doesn't disappear at full retirement age. So this is something you need to be aware of. What doesn't count as earnings? And one of the questions I've gotten a lot lately is, does unemployment count? And the answer to that is it does not count. So if you were in a situation where you had to file for unemployment this year and you still need to file for Social Security or considering it, unemployment won't ding you in terms of this $18,240 limit. Pension income doesn't count. That's not active income. Rental property, IRA distributions, alimony, none of that counts. It's truly earned income. What's the fine print? Important to know, because this is a common question. The earnings of your spouse do not affect the earnings limitation of you if you're the early filer. So in other words, if I'm 62 considering filing, I've recently left my job, I want to go ahead and file, but my husband makes $100,000 a year, I'm probably going to pay taxes. In fact, I know I'm going to pay taxes on the benefit, but I can still file and not worry about any of my benefits being withheld or pulled back because of excess earnings. It also applies to any type of retirement benefit. I mean, any type of Social Security benefit. Disability benefits are different, and obviously you shouldn't be working if you're collecting disability. But if it's a retirement, spousal, ex-spousal, even survivor benefits, this earnings limitation applies anytime you're working and you want to file for benefits before your full retirement age. So just be aware of that. And then if benefits are withheld because you've had excess earnings, they aren't truly lost because they will be restored in the form of a higher benefit at full retirement age. So let me give you an example. So Jane filed at 62, but her excess income caused 24 months, the equivalent of 2 years of benefits to be withheld over that course of time. At her full retirement age, her monthly benefit was recalculated as if she had filed at age 64, not age 62. So at 66, in this case, her full retirement age is 66, they would increase her monthly benefit to account for those benefits that were withheld. Here's the other thing that you need to be aware of, and this is why I want to make sure you understand that the earnings limit applies, because you always want to be proactive. If you think that you truly need to file for Social Security benefits and you are not sure or even know that your income will exceed these thresholds, you don't want to get the letter after the fact, because when Social Security, they look at your prior year's earnings, they will calculate to determine if they paid you too much, and they will ask for it back in lump sum. So I always say, sometimes you just have to file, but just be preemptive in telling them. They should be asking you when you file, how much do you expect to earn, so that they make that adjustment on the front end instead of expecting money that you probably don't have on the back end. And here's the other thing that most people don't know, is that if you have a pullback of benefits, they don't just shave a little bit off your monthly benefit. What they do is they don't start paying you until that excess amount has been accounted for. And here's an example. Frank files for benefits at 63, but he informs Social Security ahead of time, so he's proactive, that he expects to earn 32,000, right? So his monthly benefit is 2,000 per month. His excess income is 13,760. So we know that 50% of that is what they're going to shave off of his benefit. So he's got excess income that's going to reduce his benefits by $6,880. Here's what they do, though. They say, okay, that $6,880, if we divide that by your $2,000 monthly benefit, that's 3.44 months of benefits, which we are going to round to 4 months. So we're not going to pay you until month 5. When you're in a situation where you're planning for income, that is a shock to the system if you're not aware of how that's done. So sometimes filing for benefits from that standpoint won't fit the income need anyway, because you can't go the first 4 months without the benefit. So just be aware of that. So let's switch gears and talk about Social Security benefits and taxes. Okay, so earnings. So the takeaways there are, anytime you file for benefits before full retirement age and you continue to work, be mindful of that. It goes away at full retirement age. That's a critical thing. If you do have excess benefits that are pulled back during this period of time before full retirement age, you'll get it back. Your earnings of your spouse don't count against you, okay? Now let's switch gears and talk about Social Security benefits and taxes. And this essentially revolves around a 2-step process. The first is determining provisional income. This is one of those acronyms, right? PI. It's sometimes called combined income. Now, what you'll notice here is the 3 elements are modified adjusted gross income, non-taxable interest, which is odd, right? Non-taxable interest, like municipal bond interest, isn't federally income taxable, but in this point, for this purpose, it's pulled back into this equation for provisional income. So be mindful of that if you're a muni bond holder. And then 1/2 of your annual Social Security benefits. So think about this. Adjusted gross income is the household income. So if you're married, we're considering all income in the house. If you're both collecting Social Security, we're considering taking the sum total of those 2 annual benefit amounts and dividing it by 2, and that becomes your provisional income. It's sort of a fictitious formula to get this provisional income. Then you take that number and you compare it to your filing status and thresholds of income. And here's what they look like. If you're married filing jointly, if that figure is $32,000 or less, you're not going to pay taxes on any bit of your Social Security benefits. $25,000 if you're single or married filing separately, okay? And you can see as it goes through, more than, anywhere between $32,000 and $44,000 of income exposes as much as 50% of your Social Security benefits to tax. More than $45,000 if you're married filing jointly exposes up to 85%. Now, what this means is if you're $44,000, it's as much as 85%. It doesn't automatically at $44,001 put 85% of your benefits taxable. It is a worksheet that you have to figure out. But the point being is that there is a high likelihood that if you're on this call, you probably do have other sources of income that's going to supplement Social Security. And so you need to be mindful of how those other sources of income are going to play in the sandbox with Social Security. And, I always say, that Social Security, you can't look at your filing decision in a bubble. It is such a holistic decision because of this. This is an exact reason. The other thing I'll point out is that these numbers have been the same since the Social Security Administration added taxes to benefits back in 1983 in the Social Security Act of '83, and they've never implemented a COLA. a cost of living adjustment. So think about that, $32,000 or less. Very few of us, I mean, especially if you're including half of your Social Security benefits, it doesn't take a lot of other income sources that are taxable to cause you to be in a situation where a portion of the benefits is subject to income tax. So that's where the holistic planning comes in. Are there ways that you can, sort of try to avoid or at least mitigate the taxes on your benefits? So here's some key takeaways about taxes. The first is, unlike the earnings limitation, the earnings of the spouse and other sources of income are considered. So it's not just earned income, it's other things, the things we talked about. It's unemployment income, which is taxable. It is IRA distributions, is if you're lucky enough to have one, a pension, dividend income, real estate, all of the things that go into your adjusted gross income are fair game. And this doesn't disappear at full retirement age. Again, I'm comparing it because they get confused. The earnings limitation no longer applies at full retirement age, meaning I could hit full retirement age and make $500,000, would have no problems with the earnings limitation, but I'm going to be paying taxes on 85% of my Social Security benefits. And then beware of municipal bond interest. We talked about that. And even if the earnings threshold isn't exceeded for full retirement age filers, taxes will likely take a bite out of it. So a lot of times when I speak to someone that says, I'm really considering taking my benefit early, my first thing is, if somebody's in the household, even if we don't have an earnings threshold problem, if your spouse is still working, just expect that you're likely going to pay taxes on your benefit. So does it make it the best choice if you have another option, because you're already taking a permanently reduced benefit for the rest of your life in most cases, and then you're going to pay taxes on it. So your net benefit is going to be, small. So you just have to think about that. So are there ways to mitigate that? And I'm a big Roth advocate, Roth IRAs, Roth 401ks, all the way. Roth conversions. Why am I a big advocate of that? Because we know that if we have qualifying Roth distributions, so those that are held for 5 years and made a qualifying event, for most people that's age 59 and a half, what happens to all that tax deferred growth? It's tax free. Is that part of AGI? No. So therefore, is it part of provisional income? No. So that's why, to help diversify, I'm always talking about diversifying from tax classes. I'm a big advocate of Roth conversions just because it takes that tax risk off the table. And then loans for most cash value life insurance also are tax free. So those are sort of some ideas to think about, if you're trying to plan to make more of a tax efficient claiming strategy. Some of those strategies are something I would think about. And then I always say it's critical to have a holistic planner in your corner, because again, anybody that's telling you, because I get this question a million times because I'm in the business, when should I file? Is there a rule of thumb? And I say absolutely no, there's no rule of thumb. And if someone's telling you that, you need to run. Anybody that says everyone should file at 62 because it's not going to be there is an alarmist. Excuse me. Don't listen to that. Likewise, if anyone says everyone should wait to 70, there's no everyone, because we're all different. We all have different needs. We all have different sources of assets. And so it's really important to work with someone who looks at all of the different variables and make sure that they understand the interplay between all of them. Married couples, there is no I in couple. And I say this because what I was saying about earlier about, we tend to make our claiming decision based upon, we're looking at ourselves. How long do we think we'll live? Well, if we look at the average 65-year-old man, we know this. He tends to live to age 84. The average 65-year-old woman lives about 3 years longer to age 87. But here's the problem with doing sort of a break even, considering only one life. And that is, it only considers a single life expectancy. It doesn't consider the cumulative lifetime of the couple. It also can compromise survivor income, and I'm going to show you an example of that in a second. And it's particularly impactful if we're only looking at a break even from a single point of view when there's there we go. Okay. I wanted to show you what it looks like if you start looking at a married couple and you look at them as a couple, right? So I took from a Longevity Illustrator website, I just took a plain vanilla, very boring couple that were born on the same day of the year. They're both 65. They both have average health. They both don't smoke. And I looked at their hypothetical longevity at various ages. So remember I said an average male lives to be 84. Well, in this scenario, we show that 54% of men are still alive at 85, 33% at 90. With women, there's still a 64% chance they'd be alive at 85, 44% chance at 90. And you can even see there's an 8% chance of a woman being alive to 100. So the point of that is to show that when you start looking at the laws of break even, you really need to look at the couple, because the longevity of the couple is going to be longer and more impactful to a claiming decision than just looking at them from a single focus. And let me show you it. This is inspired by a real case, by the way, and I love it. I use it a lot. I had a situation where, excuse me, I'm so sorry, y'all. Hold on. I had a situation where I had a couple, and the Jack isn't really his name, but Jack, who's my son's name, was a higher wage earner. He had recently retired, and he was saying, "Look, I'm going to file at immediately at 62 because not a single man in my life has lived past 75. We all have heart problems. I'm going to file." Jane, his much younger spouse, by a few years, had a benefit that was much less. I'm so sorry, y'all. I've got a cold. So even when I showed him living to 75, her living just to average, and only a 1% cost of living adjustment, you can see the star right here. He still should wait until 70. And he was like, "What on earth? That makes no sense to me." The reason was because even if he died at 75, they would collect more benefits cumulatively over their collective lifetimes, even him dying that early, if he filed as late as he could because of Jane's much smaller benefit. So if I had him file when he planned, which was 62 and 62, they would have gotten about a $941,000 cumulative benefit. But if he waited to 70, only collecting for 5 years, they would still collect $191,635 more in that scenario. And the reason was because of that disparity. Not only having him wait until as late as possible, Jane is likely going to step into the higher survivor benefit sooner, and she's going to collect that for the rest of her life. So that's why I'm so passionate about making sure that you understand, particularly when you have married couples with a disparity, meaning one makes significantly more than the other. What I always say, and I don't like rules of thumb, but when someone really says, "What do you really think about this kind of situation?" I always say, if you have to make a decision, and let's face it, nobody wants to everybody wait till 70. I mean, technically, with life expectancies the way they are, that might be a good idea. But I would say if you really want somebody to file, have the lower wage earner file first. Let's hold out to at least full retirement age if we can for the higher wage earner. And the reason is not only is it going to give you more lifetime income with longevity increasing, but you're going to secure a higher survivor benefit to whomever of the two outsurvives the other. That's my one rule of thumb if I have to have one. Oh, and here's the other thing. In survivor benefits, if he had filed like he wanted to without talking to us, her benefit for as a survivor would have been $26,000 a year instead of $40,000 a year. That is significant. And so they did end up filing at 70, by the way, or deciding to file at 70. So what's your takeaways? Be careful and rely too heavily on break even for deciding when to file, especially if you're thinking about it from a single focus. People also tend to underestimate their perceived life expectancy. We just do, and people are living longer and longer. So, having that sort of alternate planning strategy or somewhere in the middle with respect to claiming is probably not a bad idea. And then the joint life expectancy of a couple is longer when considered as a unit. And then if one spouse continues to work, what is the tax implication on the other spouse's benefit? I mean, ideally, we would wait until both spouses are no longer working, just from the tax perspective of not having to pay additional taxes on Social Security benefits. And then again, I can't say this enough. One of the first things I look at when working with married couples is their benefit amounts and the disparity, and also their age disparity, because that does play into when I would think they should file and what they should be thinking about. So, like I said, if we want to have one quote rule of thumb, have the lower earning spouse file first to get some fun money or whatever the case may be, and hold out a little bit longer for the higher wage earning spouse because it's essentially insurance. It's kind of insurance for the survivor. And so we just want to make sure we're taking care of whomever survives the other. So let's talk about, I'm switching over, survivor switch technique. I'm going to go real briefly, and I know we can talk after when you schedule appointments with Abby and April, but I apologize for going a little bit fast, but I could talk about Social Security for 6 hours. But survivor benefits, the only, when we talk about spousal and retirement benefits, they are generally only available as once you reach age 62. The only difference with that is survivor benefits. You can collect survivor benefits as early as age 60, even as early as age 50 if you were disabled within 7 years of your spouse's death. You could possibly collect benefits if you're at any age, if you're caring for a qualified dependent who is someone in the home that's under age 16. The earnings limit applies, though, so you may or may not be able to. It is, remember, subject to the earnings limitation if you want to collect benefits before your survivor full retirement age. And keep in mind that survivor full retirement age differs than regular full retirement age by year of birth. If you're born between 1955 and 1961, you can get that information on Social Security's website. Just type in survivor FRA. And then here's the difference too. With spousal benefits, when both spouses are living, or ex-spousal benefits, you're always entitled to a maximum of 50% of the other spouse's full retirement age benefit, if you're entitled to it, if your own benefit isn't higher or whatever. In survivor situations, here's where you're entitled to 100% of what they were collecting or entitled to collect at the time of their death. And that's why it's critical with this disparity of income conversation, because not only is it 100%, but it also includes delayed retirement credits that they earned. So hear me on that. So that's why I'm saying when you have a couple that has a disparity, have the higher wage earner wait at least until full retirement age. If they can wait longer, great, because they're earning delayed retirement credits that they not only get to enjoy during lifetime, but when one spouse dies, the surviving spouse inherits those delayed retirement credits that the other spouse earned if it's the higher benefit. So here's what I'm talking about, the survivor switch technique. If an individual is entitled to both a retirement benefit and a survivor benefit, they can file first for the lower benefit and switch over to the higher benefit later, regardless of age. And this is what Social Security Administration most times will not tell you. So let's look at a hypothetical case study. Susan, who turned 66 in August, her husband passed recently. She hadn't yet filed for benefits. He was collecting $2,100 at the time of his death. She hasn't filed. Her estimated benefit at her full retirement age is $1,800, so it's less than his survivor benefit. What are her options? Well, probably the one that she would do if she just went to Social Security Administration is that she would file now, collect the higher of the two benefits. She'd collect her $1,800 plus the survivor excess for the total of $2,100. Or she could restrict her filing to survivor benefits now and later switch to her own. Now, remember, I talked about filing restricted before with respect to two spouses are living. That can only be done by someone who was born before January 2nd, 1954. With survivor benefits, there's no age requirement, okay? So she could say, okay, let me file for survivor benefits now and collect the $2,100. Why would I do that since it's higher? Well, then I can switch at 70 to my own benefit that has now earned delayed retirement credits, and I'll get $23.76 per month. Did you see how that works? So that's what I'm talking about, is that most people miss that opportunity. So I want to make sure that you're aware of it and you work with someone who understands it. So what are the key takeaways? Survivor benefits are subject to the earnings limitation. If the survivor benefit is collected at or before the survivor's FRA, it will be reduced, just like any other benefit is reduced. But sometimes when you're in a situation where you can use the switch technique, it's okay to have it reduced because you're only going to collect it for a certain period of time if you're going to switch over to your own benefit at 70. Social Security will generally not offer it as the option. There is the rare exception where they might say, hey, did you know? But they typically don't say that. So what you want to do is compare the survivor benefit to your own retirement benefit age 70 and say, okay, which one's going to produce the higher benefit? Whichever one's going to produce the higher benefit, wait to collect that one and collect the other one first. That way you're really utilizing and utilizing your income and getting the most out of your benefits between the two. Also, survivor benefits are available to former spouses, again, who meet the 10-year requirement of marriage and who are either unmarried or haven't remarried until age 60 or after. This applies also. So say you have a widow who was widowed at 50. If she remarries before the age of 60, she wouldn't be able to collect survivor benefits from the first spouse. But if she married 60 or later, she still would be able to collect survivor benefits from the former spouse. And the same goes with ex-spousal benefits. So just be aware of that as well. Cash flow strategies, I'm going to try to talk through so we can get to our questions. But these are some of the questions I get about, are there ways to, in the pandemic, people are more concerned about cash flow. What are some strategies to think about? One is called file now and withdraw later. So this may help mitigate sequence of returns risk, meaning you typically try not to draw money out when the market's down, because you're just exacerbating the loss. And so one option would be, I'm so sorry, y'all. To consider withdrawing so first you file for benefits, and then you withdraw your application. What that means is you file for benefits while you need the cash flow, and then within the first 12 months, you can choose to withdraw your application. Now, the critical ingredient there is it has to be within the first 12 months. It has to be one decision per lifetime. And the biggest one is that you have to pay back the benefits that you've already received. And that's sometimes a hit, one that you can't take. And so that's the downside of that. But if you are able to say, okay, I'm going to collect it now while I'm having, my business is down, but I'll pay it back, then that is an option to get you cash flow without pulling out of investment accounts that are at a loss already. The other one is, sorry about the dogs in the background, you can file now and voluntarily suspend later. So let's suppose you file for benefits, you've either gone 12 months or longer than 12 months, or you just can't pay it back. These are good for filers who need the cash flow that don't want to pay it back or have been past the 12 months. But here's the thing here, you have to wait until your full retirement age to voluntarily suspend the benefit. You can't do it before. So even if you're at 13 months and you're, say, 63, you'd have to wait until full retirement age to voluntarily suspend. What do you get for that? Well, remember, once you suspend at full retirement age, what do you start earning? You start earning delayed retirement credits again, right? So the minute you hit full retirement age, you start to earn delayed retirement credits. So during that suspension period, you're sort of recouping some of that reduction in benefits that you may have experienced by taking it early. The other is to file now and request 6 months of retroactive benefits. Now, this is available to people who have already hit full retirement age. So suppose your plan was to file at some future date, but something has happened. Let's say the pandemic happened, right? And you now find yourself needing income. You could file for benefits and you can request as much as 6 months of retroactive benefits, provided you're at least 6 months beyond full retirement age. Now, if you're only 3 months beyond full retirement age, you can only go back to full retirement age or the 3 months. So this is a way to get an immediate cash flow. But remember, you have to be beyond full retirement age. You can request up to 6 months, but no more. And it provides the immediate cash flow you need without pulling out of an investment account. If you really want to get fancy with it, you could file now, request the 6 months of benefits, collect a month of benefits, and then say, never mind, I want to voluntarily suspend. Because then what you're doing is you're getting your 6 months of benefits, and you get your first month, and then you voluntarily suspend, and you've essentially got 7 months of benefits to get you going, and then you're starting to earn your delayed retirement credits. So I know I've gone through that fast, and we can certainly, if that's something that you think might apply to you, then we can talk about that offline. Let's talk quickly about the OSDI Board of Trustees report. So you probably know, and you see it in the newspaper every year, that every year the Social Security Board of Trustees releases a 75-year projection of the trust funds. Now, this year, it isn't that much vastly different than last year's report. This year, basically, if there's no legislative changes, the trust fund will be depleted in 2035, and only about 76% of promised benefits will be able to be paid starting in 2035. Not very different from last year. What I will tell you is that the trust report did specifically say, P.S., this doesn't include any effects of the pandemic. Could the pandemic affect this? Absolutely. Why is that? Well, because we have less payroll taxes going in. Do I think it's going to throw us into, oblivion and we should all run for the hills and start collecting benefits? No. I think that if nothing changes, it could maybe bump this up to a depletion date of maybe a couple years early. But again, there's, people say, oh, should I file? And I think that's one of the questions. What should I do? There's definitely going to have to be some legislative changes. What those are, there's talk of increasing the full retirement age. That wouldn't affect those that are already taking benefits. There is a possibility, yes, that for those that are already collecting, that their benefits would be affected. I highly doubt it in my unexpert opinion, and being where I am, I just don't think that would happen. I think that that they would change things like increasing payroll taxes to try to recoup some of the deficit. But I don't think we should hit the panic button. And that's the thing I'd say. Ideally what I would say is don't hit the panic button because you think it's not going to be there. There's no way it's not going to be there. What I would say is develop strategies so that you're less reliant on Social Security for the majority of your income. So have an option A and an option B and an option C, just so you try to develop strategies so that isn't the lion's share of your income. And then I would say consider the long-term effect of lifelong Social Security income by filing early. Remember, for most cases, you file early and that's what you're living with. So be super careful about making a panic decision, because for a lot of us, Social Security is really the only pension-like form of income that we can count on, save for some other, products that might work like that. I mean, it's a really important sort of foundation of our income. And so I would say, just be careful about, listening to your neighbor about it's just not going to be there. There's just no way that it's not going to be there. And there's going to be changes. Yes. I don't think that they would pull the rug out from those that are close to retiring. I mean, Steve Goss, who is the chief actuary for Social Security, I listen to him every year when he comes and talks about this. He doesn't give me the impression that they're going to pull the rug out from under near retirees or those that have already retired that are collecting. So that's my opinion about that. And I tried to go as fast as I could to leave time for questions. So please hit me up.
That was awesome, Heather. Thank you so much. Thanks for hanging in there. I know you've got a little bit of a cold thing going on, and you did fantastic. So you pretty much covered really all of the questions. So we'll just kind of quickly go through a couple of them that maybe weren't included in the information. That was the best summary of Social Security that I've probably ever heard. So
well, thank you.
Very well
and I apologize for going fast. I told you I was going to drink an espresso so I could talk through that in 45 minutes.
You did that expertly. Yes, absolutely. Fantastic job. So let's just go through. I want to hit a couple of these questions for 5-10 minutes, and then I'm going to pass it to April. So let's see. The first question is from Pat, and he asks, is your benefit amount calculated by your income for a full year or the month of your birthday?
Okay, I think I read that before. I think that was a pre-question, and I was trying to figure out what that meant. So Pat, what I would say is your benefit amount is calculated, and again, there's so many topics we could cover, and I didn't cover this one, but your benefit amount is calculated on the highest 35 years of your earnings history. Now, all of those earnings are indexed up to the year that you turn 60. So that means that, 1970s earnings isn't going to look like 1970s earnings. It's going to be indexed to look like current earnings. But your highest 35 years of earnings are included. I don't know if that's your question. Now, if you have less than 35 years of earnings, then there's going to be big fat zeros in the years to cover those, to get you to 35 years. So I'd say the longer you work, the better to close those gaps. But I'm not sure exactly what you mean by the month of. I mean, once you hit full retirement age, like April said, or Abby said, I think, you get 100% of your benefit. If you claim before that, your reduction from your full retirement age benefit is monthly. So if I file 5 months early, then I'm going to get a 5-month retroactive, I mean, not retroactive, but sort of a 5-month reduction based on a convoluted formula. So they don't just round you or something. I'm not sure if I've answered that. So if I haven't, send that email to the girls, and I will answer that one.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Yeah, we'll make sure that that was what he was asking for sure. Another quick question here is, what are the advantages and disadvantages of claiming spousal benefits? And you did a fantastic job of talking about the different options, especially based on if you're able to do a file and suspend strategy if your birthday falls in that. But can you think of any maybe disadvantages to somebody that can take advantage of one of those spousal strategies?
I would say if you can get a spousal benefit, get you some, because it's yours,
Yeah.
right? So remember, the critical thing there is it has to be less than your own benefit. What if you were a homemaker and you never earned, you have to generally work 10 years or so to be entitled to your own retirement benefit. So in the case where you're dependent, you're what they call a dependent spouse, meaning you don't have your own retirement benefit, then that you're absolutely entitled to that benefit. Your spouse has to file first, your wage earning spouse has to file first, but once they do, you absolutely should go running for that benefit because it's yours. Now, if you collect it before your full retirement age, you're not going to get the full 50%. Doesn't matter what age your spouse is when they file, it matters when you file. So if your spouse filed at 62, for example, your benefit is still based on 50% of their normal retirement age benefit, not the 62 benefit, but you have to wait until your full retirement age benefit or full retirement age to get it. And that confuses people too. But there's absolutely, you don't want to leave benefits on the table. So if you're entitled to, I see a lot of people that say, hey, I filed for my benefit. It was small. My spouse finally filed for his or hers years later. And I know that benefit, the spousal benefit, is going to be higher. What should I do? Sometimes it falls through the cracks. Now, when your higher earning spouse files, they should be asking, are you married? So that they figure out that there's a spousal excess that is to be had. But it's missed sometimes. So if you ever think that when your spouse files, you're entitled to a higher benefit as a spouse, definitely go and check that out, because you don't want to leave those benefits on the table.
Right, absolutely. Thank you so much. And that answered Mary's question as well, about how much a spouse receives if they don't have their own, qualify for their own benefit. And you also answered this question, so I'll just kind of quickly summarize this. So Herman is asking, how can you minimize the impact on Social Security when you have to start taking RMDs, those pesky RMDs that now have to be taken at 72?
Right.
And you emphasize something that we always emphasize, because we're big Ed Slot people, both of us, all of us, is Roth conversion. So, or if you're, if you're in the position to do Roths instead of, or in addition to, but just Roths in general, and maybe doing some Roth conversion planning before you hit that age 72 is huge.
Exactly. I mean, that's a huge, and Ed Slott and I, that's our love language, is Roth conversions, because
Right.
I mean, look at where we are with national debt. I mean, our taxes, the real question is, are taxes going to go up or down? I mean, we always have thought 20 years ago, oh, when you retire, you're going to be in a lower tax bracket. That isn't necessarily a sure thing, the way things are going with the historic stimulus package, all of these things. And so I'm always a big encourager, as are you all and Ed, to try to mitigate that risk. And so with RMDs, the first thing I do, because when I work on a Social Security analysis, I always want to know where are the other assets. And inevitably, a lot of people have their money in a 401k or an IRA. And so I'm already calculating that RMD. If we do nothing, what's that RMD going to look like at 72? And so if we're lucky enough to be able to plan strategically before we get to 72, then there are some strategies to use. Do Roth conversions. If you have a need for insurance, do cash value life insurance, because you can take money out of that to supplement income tax-free. There are strategies to use. Now, if you're at the point at which you're at no return and you've got to take your RMDs, I mean, you have to take the RMD. Could you convert more than the RMD each year to try to get out of that situation for future years? Yes. The other option is the qualified charitable distribution for people that are give to charity, if you're given to your church, and once you hit 70 and a half, even though RMDs are at 72 now, if you're at 70 and a half and you're giving routinely to a charity of some sort, stop doing that from cash and start doing it as a qualified charitable distribution from your IRA, because you not only satisfy your RMD up to $100,000 transferred to charity, but it's also tax-free instead of a tax deduction, PS. So just be aware of that. But that's really the only way to avoid taxes on an otherwise RMD that's due is through a QCD or doing conversions beforehand. Yeah.
Great. Perfect. Thank you so much. That was perfect. Last question. We've answered really all the rest. You've answered all the rest of them, except for this one. This one's really a really good question here that we haven't gotten into too much detail about. So this is from Conrad, and he says, if I find I made an error when I filed for Social Security, can I change it? And I know that really depends.
Yeah, so I don't know what kind of error. If it's an oopsie, like,
Right.
oh, I wish I had listened to this webinar before I went and filed, which happens, then an oopsie means that you can. If you filed and you wish you hadn't, or for whatever reason, it can be whatever reason, you came into an inheritance, whatever the case may be, the withdrawal of application is your best way to undo an error, if that's the kind of error we're talking about. And so you would file, contact Social Security. They have a form called an S-521 form that you withdraw your application by using that form, and you fill it out. They tell you how much you have to pay back, and no harm, no foul. It's as if you had never filed, but you do have to pay back the benefits. That's the best way to undo a previous claiming decision. Again, has to be done within the first 12 months of filing, and it can only be done once in a lifetime. So don't have two oopsies, just one.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Make sure you listen to this webinar, and then if you need to go back,
Yeah.
but don't change it and then listen to it and then try to change it again.
Yeah.
So, and a couple of just quick thoughts that I have. Again, thank you so much, Heather. I'm going to turn it over to April to close us off. But I was just thinking as you were talking, how important is this information to know before you start to make a retirement plan? Because all of these things, these moving parts, like you said, you can't make a decision, Social Security decision, in a bubble. Everything really, it's like a domino effect.
It is.
And it's so critical and crucial to know these intricacies before you make your retirement income plan. And you're passionate about income planning. We're very passionate about income planning. And it's imperative that you have advisors and a team that are retirement specialists instead of just giving advice on investments only. Those are two very different things. And you've done a wonderful job of explaining why. So I'm going to turn it over to April to close us out. Heather, again, I can't thank you enough. You're awesome. You're incredibly intelligent.
Love to do it. Sorry about the coughing in between there on occasion.
That's okay. Thanks for being a trooper for us. We appreciate it.
I'm glad to do it.
Incredibly impressive getting through that with your voice, no less. So we do greatly appreciate it. For those of you, I think there were a couple just kind of very late questions coming in. We tried to handle the ones that we could. So we're going to go back through and make sure that if there's anything that we missed, or, if maybe you asked a question before we started today and then the topic was covered, to make sure that you feel like you have the clarity that you need. A couple of times as we've gone through the webinar today, I've put the link, which for some people, I'm not sure it's popping up as a link. I just entered it again. If you want to schedule a time to speak with us about your filing strategy, any Social Security questions you have, how that incorporates adequately into your overall retirement income plan, then if that's not appearing as a link for you, you can simply copy and paste that into your browser. It will pull up a calendar. You can go ahead and secure a time to do that now. Those are in 30-minute slots. We're happy to help you in any way that we can. And thank you, Heather. Thank you, Abby. We look forward to seeing you all again on an upcoming Health and Wealth webinar event. So have a wonderful evening. God bless. Stay well, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, everyone. Thanks for being here with us.